Coney Island. Coming down from Downpatrick, stopping off at St. John's Point, out all day birdwatching, and the crack is good. Stopped off at Strangford, Lough early in the morning and drove through Shrigley.
Drove through Shrigley, taking pictures and on to Killyleagh. Stopping for Sunday papers at the Lecale District. Just before Coney Island. On and on over the hill to Ardglass and the jamjar. Autumn sunshine, magnificent and all shining through. Stop off at Ardglass for a couple of jars of mussels and some potted herrings in case we get famished before dinner. On and on over the hill and the crack is good. Heading towards Coney Island. Now look at the side of your face. As the sunlight comes streaming through the window in the autumn sunshine. And all the time going to Coney Island, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if it was like this all the time?
I've always had some idea of trying to explore the relationship between poetry, mysticism, poetry, religion, poetry, nature, and nature and healing. In the beginning with me, it was unconscious. I started writing songs at a very early age. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Later on, I was trying to find a way to connect what I was doing with my contemporaries. I discovered, however, I was writing what some people call transcendental poetry, other people call it mysticism and poetry, other people call it nature poetry. Why was I writing this kind of material when my contemporaries weren't? So I wanted to find out where I stood and what tradition I came from. Well, eventually I found out that the tradition I belong to is actually my own tradition. It's like being hit over the head with a baseball bat. You find out what you've been searching for, you already are. This writing actually comes from the places I used to go. For example, when I was a kid, the area I was brought up in, and thread took me from there to research poets like Yeats and Keats, Wordsworth, Coleridge, and eventually to the Glens poets of Northern Ireland, for example. Last year I got together with some of today's Irish poets, John Montague, Seamus Dean and Michael Longley, to talk about these ideas. We met at a place called Lecale on the Wicklow Mountains south of Dublin. Lecale is the home with Gareth Brown, who has been very much part of the Irish and poetry world through his record company, Claddagh.
But I think you were perfectly correct when you felt that nature actually has a much more important influence on people than they realize. Subconsciously, I was drinking all this in, and that's how I became interested subsequently in poetry and traditional music, which in a way springs from the land.
I think having access to the country was very, very important. Yes. And I never really feel very comfortable just being in a city. I always feel like there's a strong connection between being in the countryside and the creative process. I mean, as far as getting creative ideas or, you know, ideas for songs coming into my head, it always seems to happen more when I'm in the country than when I'm in a city. And I think it's also got something to do with having space, having a certain amount of space for your mind to open up, to receive.
And now I wander in the woods, when summer gluts the golden bees, or in autumnal solitudes arise the leopard-coloured trees.
Van's question about the healing power of poetry or of art, I think it's an important one. I hold on to, sometimes quite desperately, the notion that there are redemptive and healing powers in art, and that we can't measure the effect it has immediately. We can't measure it within a generation, but finally it's an accumulation of refined, courageous responses to life, whether it be in a song or in a poem.
Now, buttoned up with water in my shoes, clouds around me, I can through mist that misconstrues read like a palimpsest my past, those landmarks and that scenery.
I would like to think of poetry as a way of singing the universe, creating the universe through a song that actually will, you know, in some sense, at some stage, come true.
I'm appalled by its emptiness. Every valley glows with pain as we run like a current through. Then the memories darken again. In this Irish past I dwell like sound implicit in a bell.
Look what they're doing to the whole landscape. Look at this. If you bring the bulldozers out, they can change all your sacred places with a giant shovel. There's also the move to take away the place names in the north of Ireland. You know,
the townland names, yes.
Names the townlands, and we could lose all this absolutely magical stuff.
That's one of the reasons poetry is important. I mean, to preserve the names.
Tuberous tentacles of oak, hawthorn, buried pignut, the topsoil of a living shape of earth lifts like a scalp to lay open slipping sand shale, compressed veins of rock.
One is not being escapist when one writes about the landscape. I mean, I'm not writing about the landscape just as the birds and the bees, you know. The flowers and the birds and the lay of the land, the shape of the fields, all of that is saying something about my own inner self. And I hope if I am honest to my inner self, I'm being honest to something wider.
I have turned to the landscape because men disappoint me. Animal, plant or insect, stone or water are every minute themselves. They behave by law. I am not required to discover motives for them. I live my best in the landscape, being at ease there.
Well, this is a poem that I wrote a couple of years ago that I turned into a song eventually by just putting music to it. It's in the tradition of the Glens poets of Antrim and County Down, and it's called I'm Tired Joey Boy. I'm tired, Joey Boy, while you're out with the sheep. My life is so troubled, I can't get to sleep. I would walk myself out, but the streets are so dark. I shall wait till the morning and walk in the park. My life is so simple when one is at home, and I'm never complaining when there's work to be done. Well, I'm tired, Joey Boy, of the makings of men. I would love to be cheerful again.
Sit down by the river, watch the stream flow. Recall all the dreams that you once used to know. Things you've forgotten took you away. Pastures not greener, but meaner. Love of the simple is all that I need. I've no time for a schism, or lovers of greed. Go up to the mountain, go up to the glen, when silence will touch you and heartbreak will end.
John Montague knows this place almost as well as Gareth. They have been friends since the 50s when John began writing poetry.
There are these marvellous poems in early Irish, not too far away from here at Lough, you know, the monastery. And in those monastic settlements, the monks they'd be copying down manuscripts, and as they were working, they'd hear a blackbird, and they'd just write a little poem on the edge of their manuscripts. And it's very present in all their manuscripts and in all that early poetry. There's the presence of nature. There's the loveliness of the land of Ireland is being mentioned continually.
A wall of woodland overlooks me. a blackbird sings me a song, no lie. Above my book, with its lines laid out, the birds in their music sing to me. The cuckoo sings clear and lovely voice in his great cloak from a bushy fort. I swear it now, but God is good. It is lovely writing out in the wood.
As I was saying to you, Van, this morning, the landscape of Ireland is what's really prominent, and that we come out of it and we'll go back into it. And all the other little bothers we have along the way, you know, the land underlies all that. I think the way we slowly cut ourselves off from all the instincts that we had and we still have as animals has been obscured by technological progress. So we're beginning to we're beginning to kill ourselves off inside and to kill everything that was around us. So we have to reverse that process, and we have to refine the animal inside us, and the instinctive side inside us.
I am wind on sea, I am wave in storm, I am sea sound. And seven-horned stag, I am hawk on cliff, a drop of dew in the sun, a fair flower, a boar for valour. I am salmon in pool, lake on plain, a hill with ditches, a word of art, a piercing point that pours out rage, the god who fashions fire in the head.
In ancient Ireland, there were 4 ways of achieving supreme knowledge. And one was the way of loneliness, which is also called the Hill of Silence. And I won't tell you about the other 3 for the time being, just to keep you on your toes out there. So this poem is called the Hill of Silence. It's a path which was followed by some of the old Gaelic poets like Egon O'Reilly. And it's a way of being healed by nature through loneliness. From the platform of large raised stones, lines appear to lead us along the hillside. Bog tuft softening beneath each step, bracken and briar restraining our march, clawing us back, slowing us to perception's pace. 2. A small animal halts, starts, leaps away, and a diligent spider weaves a trembling silver web, a skein of terrible delicacy, swaying to the wind's touch, a fragile silken scarf, a vein translucent leaf. 5. This is the slope of loneliness. This is the hill of silence. This is the wind's fortress, our world's pole star, a stony patience. 6. We have reached a shelf that surveys the valley. On these plains below, a battle flowed and ebbed, and the gourd-spent warrior was ferried up here, where water and herbs might staunch his wounds. 7. Let us also lay ourselves down in the silence. Let us also be healed. Wounds closed, senses cleansed, as over our bowed heads the mad larks multiply, needles stabbing the sky in an ecstasy of stitching fury against the blue void, while from clump and tuft, cranny and cleft, soft-footed, curious, the animals gather around. I'm starting to spit. You start to spit when you get going.
It seems there was never a time when nature wasn't central to Irish poetry.
Still south I went, and west and south again, through Wicklow from the morning till the night, and far from cities and the sights of men, lived with the sunshine and the moon's delight. I knew the stars, the flowers and the birds, the grey and wintry sides of many glens, and did but half remember human words, in converse with the mountains, moors and fens.
Seamus Dean is both a poet and professor of literature at University College Dublin.
Since, in fact, much of Irish politics and history has been about the land, you know, the land wars, the possession, the dispossession, the repossession of land, the relationship between that kind of, if you like, political possession and dispossession, and the imaginative possession and repossession that you find in poets like those I've mentioned. That's to say that, you know, to repossess something imaginatively actually might be a way out of the feeling which is frequent in Irish writing, the feeling of being not only dispossessed, but of belonging to something which has been fractured, broken, which is discontinuous. But time and again, the redeeming gesture in much Irish poetry is to say, but nevertheless, through the landscape, through an imaginative act of possession, one can in some way reconcile, cross all the borders of time and place, cross all of those borders and find some imaginative locale in which you can say, here we are, and here we are in possession again. Not of, you know, so to speak, a united Ireland, but an Ireland that is not a political entity anymore, an Ireland that represents a sort of a healing unity. Going northward, I would watch the fields falling below the sun into increasing darkness. Light has sculpted a deep silence between mountains, and a leaf on the windscreen shudders like an autumn compass, north, north, north. I am unwilling to go further, but your death has brought the fields, sodden with light, flooding between a gap in the mountains with the bruised tang of the sea. And I must go on, my anxiety like a raider scanning the landscape for the distance between feelings across death northward.
Michael Longley lives in Belfast, but a lot of his work is written in a small cottage in County Mayo in the west of Ireland.
The important thing about a poem is rhythm. And, you know, the rhythm of a song, the rhythm of a poem is like the heartbeat.
That's it. Yeah.
It's the body, it's the life of that particular work of art. And if you have a rhythmic failure in a song or a poem, it dies.
It doesn't resonate.
It's had it. No, it's dead. I was lucky enough to gain access to a part of, very remote part of Mayo. And gradually over the last 20 years, you know, I've been exploring it. It's important for me to get off on my own occasionally. Do you find you have to do that?
I think it's essential to writing. I mean, I think that's...
do you have any kind of country retreat?
Well, I think wherever I happen to be, you know, I just sort of take off.
I mean, sometimes in this cottage, which really is very remote in County Mayo, I suffer from a loneliness, which makes my stomach churn. And so, in order to ease that, sometimes I write. I mean, this poem describes this rather forlorn action of leaving the cottage for a honeymoon couple. I'd been there on my own, I'd left the cottage perfect for the honeymoon couple, and the only thing I could think of leaving them was what was difficult to obtain. It was the middle of winter, 2 buckets of lake water and some turf. I have hidden a key under the dry stone wall for lovers to make after me a home from home. My gifts, turf in a creel, buckets of lake water. Their witnesses, waders gathering for Greenland, the Arctic, and pebbly nests below the snow line. I sleep on the other side of the hill from them.
Brilliant.
You like that?
Yeah, yeah. I like the... It's hypnotic, you know.
Oh, that's just my voice.
Yeah, that's it.
Put anyone to sleep?
No, I mean, not in that way. It's, you know, in a soothing way, you know.
My black hills have never seen the sun rising. Eternally they look north towards Armagh. They are my Alps, and I have climbed the Matterhorn with a sheaf of hay for 3 perishing calves in the field under the big fort of Rock Savage. The sleety winds fondle the rushy beards of Shancaduff, while the cattle drovers, sheltering in the featherna bush, look up and say, "Who owns them hungry hills that the water hen and snipe must have forsaken? A poet? Then by heavens he must be poor." I hear, and is my heart not badly shaken?
There was a sort of hermetic seal across the Northern Irish mouth for a long time, and it finally broke with people like Kavanagh and yourself. I think in the early days, actually naming the Garvahis, the glass drummons. And, you know, the moment the name appeared, people actually began to recognize, that's my experience. Also, and it's no longer, it has now been resurrected. It's no longer buried. It's no longer anonymous. It's no longer so small that it's not important.
It is done without any self-consciousness as well.
Yeah.
Done naturally.
Done naturally,
Yeah.
as in Van's early songs and your poems.
The landscape issue is still alive here, but aren't we saying in a more general sense then that what differentiates art, or at least what art would like to differentiate itself by, is the notion that in art you have shape, you have form, you have articulation. And if you can articulate pain, you're not overborne by it. And that is the triumph that is involved in it, and that is its healing power.
You said yesterday, Van, that when you were growing up in East Belfast, that you felt close to the country.
Well, I was actually in
Belfast
a part of East Belfast that was actually in the country. It was close to Blinfield, Castlereagh, Cherry Valley, Comber, Newton Ards, Bangor, Donaghadee. It was actually, you know, like growing up in the country. It was a suburb of East Belfast, but it was surrounded by countryside.
It's like an almost emphasised country, isn't it, when it's in the suburbs. When I was brought up in suburban Belfast, but there were fields there, and making little alleyways through the long grass. Building tree houses in an enormous spreading crabapple tree, which was close to an ordinary road. I mean, did you have something like that?
I remember building a tree house, yeah, definitely.
And what would Van Morrison's territory be? I mean, I would mark out my territory as the top part of Balmoral Avenue, along a bit of the Malone Road, then what's now a golf course, and then the wooded slopes of the Lagan.
Well, my territory would be, I see, Castlereagh Road, Baysbridge Road, Woodstock Road, Blimfield Road.
Well, I'm caught one more time.
Well, from there to Craic.
Up on Cypress Avenue. Caught one more time. Up on Cypress Avenue.
When I return to Belfast, I'm reminded that it's a city that can't escape nature, enclosed by hills and sea, full of trees and parks. The poet Gerald Daw and I both went to the same school and share this attachment with nature.
When you view this domain, armful of clouds, look for the ledge of a leaf on which a spider spins its exits and entrances. I will be there too when the time comes, trying very hard to listen to what has been said about this, that, or the other.
And that takes you all into Newton Ards, down into Strangford, and round the other side. Then you've got the coast.
Harland and Wolff.
Harland and Wolff.
He's afraid of Harland and Wolff.
Yes.
And
the twin gables, what do I call them? The gantries. Goliath and Samson. Yeah. Do you remember the man that used to teach woodwork, and he used to rub some wood potion into his head to make it shine?
I don't know, but I hope he's not watching him.
Yeah. But there was two approaches into Orangefield. You would have come in the other side where the trees are, and then but you have lyrics from all around here, songs from all around here.
I've got a song, Orangefield.
You've got Orangefield?
On a golden autumn day.
On a golden autumn day, you came my way in Orangefield. So you're standing by the riverside in Orangefield.
There's a short story that I wrote. Yeah, I'm gonna put that. It's on the back. I haven't actually done that as a poem. Yeah, I put in one of my songs. I've got this thing about the line about sitting in Orangefield, sitting in a classroom,
Looking out the window?
I used to sit in the classroom, look out my window and dream.
Yeah.
Then go home and listen to Ray sing.
Yeah.
We used to do that after school.
Yeah.
Listen to Ray Charles.
Used to look out my classroom window and dream.
So how do we tie all this up? These landscapes, it finds its way into the work of poets and singers like a common language. So that although we speak in different voices with different intentions, there's a greater effect, greater than the parts, an effect that we might call healing with all its different meanings.
Even though it carried me through, yet it lifted me up, yet it filled me. Meditation, contemplation too. Got to go back. We got to go back. Got to go back. Got to go back. For the healing